Welcome to Room to Evolve. I'm Jessica Goulding. I'm so excited to be with you here inside our new Room to Evolve. I appreciate all of you coming with me on this journey of exploring ancient and contemporary wisdom, tools and techniques of self-study, and lenses to peer through for deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us. The name Room to Evolve literally came to me when I was feeling like I wanted to expand what I was bringing to the table, both here and in my yoga therapy work. I've spent the last 5 years practicing centering prayer, Lectio Divina, or divine reading, and labyrinth walking, both alone and in groups. And this past year, I started exploring sacred journey, myth, and archetypes. And of course, all of this gets braided into my yoga and meditation practice and teaching. So the chakras are coming with us. But that framework will be part of a larger structure we are building as different practices and wisdom are needed through these changing times. I'd like to start this episode with a little story for some background, and then bring on our conversation with our guest. But first, I encourage you to visit roomtoevolve.com. This new website, where I'm hosting my weekly blog, this podcast, and some videos for you to practice, and invitations to events, pilgrimages, and retreats. I created it not to just be a website, but a place, a room, where you can step out of the noise and into a quiet space. It's connected to Substack, and you don't have to join or subscribe. Just click no thanks. But I really hope you decide to subscribe. That way you'll get weekly musings straight to your inbox, access to future posts and resources that will only be available to subscribers. So pop in the room and say hello by subscribing to Room to Evolve. It's a sanctuary for you and other like-hearted folks to tune in, tune out the noise, and then tune into your spirit. And now for a little background and then a conversation with our guest. Let's take 2 deep cleansing breaths and arrive. Take a deep breath in. Slowly let it go. And wherever you are, whatever you're doing, one more time, a nice deep breath in. And a slow breath out. Back in the spring of 2019, I had a meeting. This was no ordinary meeting. This was a meeting born out of sadness and stress, and it created a trajectory in my life I never expected. From this one middle of the night meeting with my deepest self and an unexpected encounter with the Divine Mother, I embarked on a mission to know and to understand the divine feminine in my life, my religion, my spirituality. I dove into books. I started praying the rosary again. And I started pulling daily divine feminine oracle cards created by Megan Watterson. But I can't just seem to just learn something. I always feel the need to create something too. Like many of us, I learn through teaching and I integrate through experience. And if those experiences don't exist, well, I make one up. So in the spring of 2022, Walking with the Divine Feminine was born. It was a beautiful event with yoga, meditation, and a labyrinth walk facilitated by my friend and mentor, Nancy Herlin, at her property here in Austin. Lucky for me, today's guest happened to be in town and caught wind of our little event, so she came. When Nancy and I learned who she was before she arrived, we looked at each other and said, "Whoa, we better make this good." Because the woman who showed up that day wasn't just another labyrinth walking yogini. She was someone whose work has shaped the world's understanding of labyrinths, pilgrimage, and prayer. And it was a pleasure to meet her in person. Today's guest is Jill Geoffrion, a minister, spiritual director, author, photographer, and one of the world's leading voices on labyrinth prayer and on the Chartres Cathedral in Chartres, France, an hour outside of Paris. Jill has written 7 books on labyrinths and Chartres, including Visions of Mary, Art, devotion, and beauty at Chartres Cathedral. And she has spent decades researching, photographing, and walking sacred paths around the world. She has made more than 40 pilgrimages to Chartres and now spends several months each year living and working there, guiding pilgrims and retreatants into deeper experiences of prayer, beauty, and presence. Through her teaching, her photography, and her blog, Through Jill's Eyes, Jill invites people into pilgrimage not as tourism, but as transformation. She also installs large scale Chartres style labyrinths globally, often in places marked by suffering, creating spaces of healing and return. And on a more personal note, since that beautiful day at Walking with the Divine Feminine, Jill and I have remained partners on the path. She now attends my weekly yoga classes, and I have the honor of working with her as my spiritual director. We're also collaborating on an upcoming pilgrimage to Chartres Cathedral in October of 2026 called Hidden Things. In this conversation, we talk about what's a pilgrimage, why go, and what can happen once you decide. We'll even touch on what makes Chartres such a powerful place of spiritual renewal. I'm so grateful to be in this conversation with her. Jill Geoffrion, welcome to Room to Evolve.
Thank you. It's nice to be with you, Jessica.
I'm very excited to have you here, but I have to say, when I was looking over your bios again, I was struck and amazed that you have been to the Chartres Cathedral over 40 times.
I think that's a low estimate.
Is it a low estimate by now? My
I
goodness.
really consider myself a part-time resident. I've stopped counting, so
Because you're there every year for several months, right?
I am
Yeah.
about 4 months every year at this point.
Okay. Well, I'd
It's
love
a
to
great
start
journey.
with a little definition of what is a pilgrimage. I think that to have a conversation about pilgrimage is just good to start out with, well, what is that? What is a pilgrimage, and what makes it different from going to travel to other sacred places or places at
For
all?
me, yeah, when I present on pilgrimage, I like to have a lot of definitions because I think there's no one particular phrase that sums it all up. But I think a sacred journey or an outer journey with an inner purpose would probably be as close as I could get. And I think the idea of historically of pilgrimage was very defined and defined by religious practice. And of course, there's pilgrimage sites from every major religion and probably every minor religion as well across the globe. So this is uh, a universal call, I think, to go deeper and to go deeper by leaving what's familiar and exposing oneself to some unknowns that open one towards change, but change in the deepest sense of the word. It really encounter and change.
Hmm. The two pieces
So it's
of
getting
what
ourselves
happened.
out of yeah, I think it's getting ourselves out of our regular environments to open to the world. That might be another
It feels expansive.
definition. Yeah.
What's your origin story? What was your first pilgrimage, or what drew you to start walking and leading pilgrimage?
Boy, what a great question.
Hmm.
Probably, well, I think the Labyrinth led me to pilgrimage back in the 1990s when I was doing my graduate work. The Labyrinth found me and called me back to the Chartres Cathedral where I had been a student in college. I studied art history in Paris and had gone out to the Chartres Cathedral with our professor and had learned all about it. And when I learned about that there was a labyrinth there, I was surprised because I'd never known that as a student. It was the chairs covered the labyrinth on the floor. So probably my first pilgrimage was back to Chartres in mid 90s, maybe towards the end of the decade, to see if there really was a labyrinth on the floor, and then to uh, discover what its gifts might be for me and then for the world. So
Wow.
it wasn't intentional necessarily in as much as in a pilgrimage. It was more a search, a personal search, spiritual search. But I didn't know the word pilgrimage at the time.
Right. And so if we took it back a step, how did you discover Labyrinth?
I was doing a research project for my graduate work and was interviewing women artists about their language of prayer. And one of the women who was the sculptor said, "And of course, you know about the labyrinth." And of course, I said, "Of course, I never heard of the thing. Send me an article." And she did. And I looked at it. I didn't understand. It was a chart style labyrinth. It was about this big on a piece of paper. And I thought, this is a confusing diagram. So I blew it up on a copier and ran my finger through it to try to understand what was going on. And it told my life story to me, back to me. And so it caught my attention.
So I want to hear about this, it telling you your life story. And
Yeah.
just to get everyone on the same page, how can we define labyrinth together? And I know there's many, many definitions of that. What's a good working definition for labyrinth for anyone who's unfamiliar with the term and the practice?
A labyrinth is a design that turns back on itself more than once and reaches a center. That's how I would describe a labyrinth. It can be used as a visual meditation, as a walking meditation, with your hand. The important thing, I think, is that it's a design with a center and with a single entrance. Although the word in French, labyrinth, means both maze and labyrinth, in English, we distinguish between single and multi-cursal pathways. So the labyrinth's purpose is to lead us to a center and to give us a journey back from that center to a threshold.
Yes, there's no dead ends and things. Like I like to think the path is on your side. It is,
That's right. The
you
path
could
is on our side.
surrender and walk and let the path, let the labyrinth do the work, whether that's a handheld labyrinth, like you said, with you trace with your finger, or, out on the ground, walking with your feet. You just walk, you just
Yes,
trace. So I'm surprised to hear really that your first labyrinth experience was tracing it with your finger.
I know, which I think it's wonderful because it really helps me to understand and invite people to walk the labyrinth in any
Good.
way that it presents itself. In my work here in Thailand, where I am today, we don't always have the space to put a labyrinth in, and so we use a lot of finger labyrinths, and it's a very effective spiritual discipline and practice
Okay.
for people who have no background, even using a piece of paper or a photograph.
So can you share with us with what happened to you on that first tracing when it told you your
Um,
life story?
at that time, I had recently switched from being a pastor to being a graduate student, and there were a lot of things. I was very young and or younger. I as a pastor, you don't always share your whole life story with people. And as I traced back and forth, I just felt as if all the different parts of my life, from my childhood through my teen years, through my school years, through my pastoral life, were unfolding in front of me. It's hard to describe, but it was a very internal process. But things made sense in a new way. I guess that was the real gift of the experience. And
It
it made me
sounds like,
curious.
what's that?
It made me very curious. Like, what is this little pattern? I'm very dyslexic, so visually it didn't make sense to me. And to think that something that didn't make sense actually helped me make sense was intriguing to me. So I had to go find a labyrinth and walk it. And I did that several months later in California at the Grace Cathedral. I was preaching my aunt's funeral, and I just said to my family, "We've got to go to the Grace Cathedral. There's a labyrinth there." And so my first actual walk, was with my family, my young children, sons, and my husband. And that was a very powerful experience too, because as I was walking towards the center, I kept stepping off the path and letting people go by because people were coming in the other direction. And at that time, I was a PhD student in women's studies, and I was really surprised to see myself give up my path for other people. And it was actually quite distressing. And I couldn't not do it. As people came towards me, I just kept stepping off the path and letting them go by. So by the time I got to the center, I needed to have a very serious discussion with God, I said, what the heck is going on here? This is just not okay with me that I keep stepping off my path. And very clearly, I had the thought, which I believe was a divine revelation, which said, Jill, you are an artist. You don't even see the path. You're not getting off your path. You're making room for others. And hospitality is what this is about, not about giving up something of yours. It's about making space. And I use that still, all these years later, every day, I think, yeah, that's my gift, is to make space and welcome others on the journey.
Well, yes, I'm happy to have been involved or been a happy recipient of your hospitality in that way. And it is true how walking labyrinths so often these kind of lightning bolts of wisdom or just some clarity can come through. You know, my husband, who is not a spiritual practitioner of any sort, will walk labyrinths with me and he gets clarity on his next ideas or he just enjoys his mind settling, whereas I'm going in for the big bang. You know, I want the big wisdom. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. More often it's to feel at peace, which is kind of a radical enough thing as it is, as
It
it is.
truly is. Yeah.
So once you went to the Chartres Cathedral in or outside Paris in Chartres, how did you decide to start bringing people there as well? I mean, you have this hospitality revelation, and then years later, it's coming to fruition. Is there a moment where you kind of stepped into that role?
Probably. I just started my experience in Chartres. The first time I just sat on the labyrinth. I was with a group, and I don't know what the group did most of the time, but I sat on the labyrinth and wrote. And when I came home, I sent my notes. I wrote up my notes and just sent them to a new friend. And she called me. I really didn't know what she did. We were working together on a conference, and she said, Jill, I can't publish your book, but I sent it to another publisher, and I think they're interested. And I said, what book? I was just sent you my notes. And she said, no, 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 this is a book. And it was a book. That was my first book, Praying the Labyrinth, which is still my bestseller. A workbook for anyone who wants to go on pilgrimage, actually. And so that started a journey that I was very unexpected journey, but without any clear direction. I just felt called back to Chartres. So I would go to Chartres once a year, and then my husband went on retreat with me at Chartres, and then we started going twice a year. And then as our lives evolved, we were working in Africa and in Asia, and France is right in between those. And so between our work with leaders in places of suffering, we would come back and kind of decompress in Chartres. So I was just filling up my own well in Chartres for a long time. And as often happens when we fill up our well, it starts to overflow. So I can't even tell you when I first started bringing groups to Chartres
It
or
just
welcoming
happened.
people there. It just
Yeah,
happened.
it evolved. I
Yeah.
um I know when I got very interested in Labyrinth, I immediately thought, oh, I want to bring people to Chartres. And I was talking to you about this, and I hadn't even been yet. It's just like, but I want to bring a group. And we had a wonderful conversation. And there's a moment that I will always remember. My eyes teared up as you did it. You gave me the little candle from Chartres, and had a little bow on it. And you said, your pilgrimage has begun. And I was so, oh, I'm just going to go for me. I'm just going to have my own pilgrimage experience. And so, sure enough, a year later, we met there. And then I went a year again, another year later again. So I understand it becoming kind of, a draw more than once. And that sometimes it just happens. Sometimes, like for you, for me, that was a gift. You saying your pilgrimage has begun. And it sounds like for you, your life just took you there, just
Yeah,
glided you
I
right
felt
in,
very,
and then you kept answering that call to return.
that's right. I felt very led and without understanding, um, which is kind of how my life goes. But I also trust that the divine flow in my life is such that if things open up, I keep open going, I keep moving with the flow. And I think that's what a lot of people experience at Chart. They feel a call. They don't understand it. They don't need to understand it. They come and the gift is there. I really have to say there's nowhere in the world like Chart. But of course, I live there, so I think so. But I think that's true. I think it's a very, very special, unique unique place. And that's why I love working there and welcoming pilgrims. I really don't give tours of the cathedral. I really do spiritual direction in the cathedral because it's a it was meant to be a place of transformation. It was built to draw us into the divine flow. And that's my joy is welcoming people who come maybe without knowing why, but feeling a sense and a pull deeper. And the cathedral, everything is in the cathedral. It was built to be an encyclopedia. And so wherever a person is in their life, there's something there that can open the next doorway. And I feel this myself. I go every morning when I'm in Chartres. I myself go up to the cathedral at 8:30, as close to 8:30 as I can when the doors open. And I spend my time every morning just, as I say, filling my well. And God speaks to me every day, every day. And so it's a privilege to welcome others who feel that call and have no idea why they're coming. Some do, and um, it's beautiful to see what the cathedral can open for them, what the spirit can open for them in that place.
Yeah, it really does kind of feel like a, a portal that calls.
Mhm.
I went because I loved labyrinth walking and I was curious about going there. But then once I got there, I was like, what am I doing here? It was very discombobulating and I just would sit in different places and then it settled me. And one thing that you told me, because I was feeling very shaky on my first time there, you said the Chartres Cathedral is a tuning fork and the vibration of the cathedral itself will recalibrate you. And there can be some trembling and there can be some shakiness. And I don't know if that happens to everyone, but I know that's what happened to me. And is there anything to add to the tuning fork revelation? What is it about it? You've described before that there's actually sacred geometry in the building of it, all around the labyrinth. Why is this
Yeah,
place such a tuning fork?
there's a lot of different ways to answer that. I'll just say a few things. The Chartres Cathedral sits on the top of a very old sacred site. It's kind of think of it in the middle of the Iowa of France. There's a lot of fields and rural areas around the cathedral, and then there's this promontory, limestone promontory. On top of that promontory sits the Chartres Cathedral. It's a huge stone building built 800 years ago with intention of thought and purpose. So there's an actual, um, it actually resonates. And there are musicians who bring us, I think of the German composer Helge, I'm not going to pronounce his last name well, but he brings groups and actually does music the entire week, creating their own music and also feeling the music of the cathedral. And he can tell you from a musical point of view how the whole cathedral is laid out. That's one way to think of it. But you can also think of it from an architectural point of view. And what is the architecture? How does it interact with our body? Because it was actually designed to interact with our body. It's a microcosm, and then there's a macrocosm of the cathedral. So you can go from that aspect, or you can go from the aspect of color, the colors that were chosen. And most of the windows are still original to the 13th century. Those colors were studied and used to create an effect on the body to open us to the divine flow. And so, without any words, but just by meditating and looking up at the windows, your body opens in certain ways and your brain recalibrates in certain ways. Or another way to look at it is it's just an amazingly beautiful place. And to be inside of beauty uh, for whatever period of time changes us. So, on many, many different, and those are just off the top of my head, but
It, it's it's certainly felt there, and different times of the day offer different light, and there's all the little enclaves around the edges that offer stories to encounter. That's where I encountered, Our Lady of the Pillar, and and I had an experience with her, and you can have little conversations with yourself and with God. It's quite an amazing thing.
exactly.
What
And you
kind of
meet
thing?
people
Yeah.
from all over the world too. I mean, I think that's one of the gifts of pilgrimage and of Chartres particularly is it draws people from everywhere and they're sitting next to you in the restaurant, they're walking with you on the labyrinth, they're looking at the window with you. Um, it's an opening sort of place for humanity, which is beautiful. We need places to be together right now.
Yeah, when I think of pilgrimage, it sounds like a very solitary endeavor, right? One person might kind of feel a call or an itch or a desire or a curiosity to go, to head out. But when you get there, when you're surrounded by people from all over the world, it's both individual and collective, and everyone's there for something else. And I enjoy watching other people do labyrinths just about as much as I enjoy walking them myself to just kind of think, oh my gosh, these are also people traveling in this time and this planet at this moment here with me at the same time. And it can kind of become meta. It just becomes bigger than, the smallness of my own little life, which is, you know, it, it's a connecting event for sure. What um what kinds of things can someone expect when they're going on a pilgrimage? Let's say they're curious and now they're like, you know what, I want to go out. What is this going out thing that we're talking about and what can happen?
A lot of what can happen depends on how willing the person is to engage the process. So, whenever we travel, whether it's pilgrimage or tourists, and I think we're always a combination of the two, uh, whenever we travel, we encounter new things. And so there's an invitation for us to rethink our ideas, rethink our life, rethink our perspectives, and to be changed. And change is not easy. So, one of my slides in my pilgrimage keynote is pilgrimage is ordeal. And it is. It's hard. It's not always, it's very, when I think about getting excited to go on a trip, you think about all the fun things that are going to happen. But actually, a trip or a pilgrimage involves a lot of unexpected moments. So my husband and children and I walked the Camino in Santiago, the 500 miles from France across northern Spain. And things happened like I got a heat stroke in the middle of nowhere when I was walking by myself one day. So that's pretty scary. And also I was taken care of by strangers. And things happen, I guess, on pilgrimage that are unexpected, that invite us to grow. And some of that growth is we're so ready for it. I think usually when people are willing to go on pilgrimage, they're ready to change, they're ready to grow. And so some of the change is super exciting and fun. And some of it sneaks up on us and calls us deeper. And in the long run, we're probably happy for it. And in the moment, maybe not so much. I mean, it takes a lot to carry your back. This is not all pilgrims carry their backpacks, but just think about it. You're carrying your backpack. You have to, it's very physical, it's very concrete as well as very opening and spiritual.
Hmm.
It's both.
How do you think someone might know that it's time to answer a call to go to pilgrimage? Is there what kind of, discernment process is there? Should they go on short little ones first and then a big long one or go for it? Or what's that process of the deciding to go? That's the first step.
I think that when you know it's time to go, you go. And if it's short, you go short. And if it's long, you go long. I think your heart knows. And I think if you hear, when I think about some of the things, well, I'll think about one day I was in the Chartres Cathedral and I saw some guy walk by with a backpack that had a shell on it. And I was like, what the heck is going on? And so I went up and found him and said, why, what are you doing? And he said, oh, I'm going to Compostela. And I said, well, what's that? And he said, oh, and he told me all about the Camino and his own journey. And in that moment, I thought, someday I'm going to do that. Then the next chapter of that is I was actually in Spain visiting my sister who lived there. We were driving through the pouring rain and we saw pilgrims walking to Compostela, and we both just laughed and said, what in the world? Those people are crazy. And the third chapter is that was me out there in the rain. So I think there's a back and forth, but there's a quickening of your spirit that says, yeah, I think I want to do that. I think I want to try. I want to try. Yeah, that's how it is for me. I'm sure it could be different for other people.
But yeah, I think that curiosity and kind of unknown desire itch, and then you find
Mhm.
yourself with maybe with even some coincidences, like you said, like there's little hints along the way. Oh, you're headed this direction. You're headed this direction. And
Yep,
those are my favorite calls. It's like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? But it's like it's reflective of the labyrinth. How well the path is there, and if you just keep going, then you're gonna end up where you're supposed to be. Um,
absolutely.
even if you think you're stepping off the path, like you were doing, that was actually getting you on the path. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I love about labyrinth and pilgrimage and those two things together is how the labyrinth can be seen as its own pilgrimage, right? Isn't it true that sometimes labyrinth can be there as a substitute for being able to go to major pilgrimage sites?
No.
Oh, then clarify together. Let's talk about it.
Um, I say no because there's a big myth out in the labyrinth world that the Chartres Labyrinth was used as a substitute pilgrimage for Jerusalem, and it's completely false. There's no evidence that it ever was, and uh, it's one of my pet peeves.
Oh,
So let
I'm
me
so
just
glad
say
to clear
that.
that up here.
But at the same time, uh, what are the steps of pilgrimage? The steps are call, the steps are stepping onto the path, which we do in the labyrinth, going to a center, a spiritual center. So Santiago de Compostela or Chartres or any major religious site, and then returning home and stepping across the threshold back with the gifts and medieval pilgrimage, you were always expected, and I think we need to bring this back into contemporary pilgrimage to bring your gifts back to the community. So while it was a single person making a pilgrimage, they were clearly in community as they went for safety in the Middle Ages, and just it just happens that if you're called to a pilgrimage, other people are going to be there with you in some level, but also to come back to your own community and to bring your gifts from that pilgrimage and share them in service. So the labyrinth does mirror that pilgrimage path in that way. It's just not a substitute for going to somewhere else.
I see. I see.
It,
Yeah, it tells a story. Like it told you your life story, but these different pieces. I think they're a beautiful way to kind of dissect one's life and one's story into, I love to think about threshold moments. Those times when it's like, okay, I'm gonna step out now. I'm gonna embark, or maybe you've got a choice between this side and that side. Those are these threshold moments that I love to think about. I think we get a lot of them over the course of our life, don't you?
Oh, definitely. And interestingly, with the labyrinth, there is only one decision that a person needs to make, and that's to step onto the path. And you don't have to choose that path, you don't have to choose to step on. You don't have to choose to cross a threshold. You come up across it, against it, or to it, and then the choice is yours. So I think many times in our life, we step up to possibility, and sometimes we step into it, and sometimes we say, no, this isn't the right time for that, and step away from it. So I never tell people, you have to walk the labyrinth. You should walk the labyrinth. No, you should go and see if it's calling you. If it is, step on. It's a threshold. So yes, I think it's a way to practice threshold moments, because we do have so many in our life.
And they require trust, like you were saying, to take that step. You have to trust that, okay, this path is here I go.
Yes, and you have to trust to step off the path too, because a threshold is a two-way doorway or two-way opening. And now we don't just keep stepping into things our whole life. There's a lot of stepping out of things as well. So I like to look at both sides of threshold, especially maybe as I age, because there's a
Oh,
big threshold to cross at the end, stepping
oh,
out and in. Right.
the final threshold.
Exactly.
Yeah. Have you ever
Yeah,
had someone come to the Chart Labyrinth or any labyrinth that you're working with and they get to the threshold and they're like, nope, can't do it. Sorry.
absolutely. Many times. And that's why I say don't worry about it. It's not the right time.
Yeah. It's an invitation, but
It
you may
might
or
not
may
be the
not want
right
to
time.
join the party.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And maybe none of us knows what's going on inside of another person and what they can tolerate. And sometimes we're not ready for change or ready for insight. We need to get ready. So getting ready is as important as stepping in, too.
The preparing. I think that was
Mhm.
probably one of my favorite things of giving myself a full year to prepare is I used your book, Visions of Mary, where you
Mm.
have photos of all the windows and statues of Mary at Chartres. And I would just go through and spend a little time each day looking at them. And if something spoke to me, then I bookmarked it so that when I got there, I was excited to go find. It was like a little scavenger hunt to go find things there. So the preparatory time is enjoyable, I think, and it's a big part of the adventure. So it's as important as hopping on that plane, I think.
Absolutely. It's even, yeah, it equally important, for sure. And I think I read some study once talking about travel, not pilgrimage, but it applies that what is done beforehand is actually people enjoy almost more than the experience itself.
The anticipation.
So the anticipation and the getting ready, there's a lot of ways to get ready. And as I said to you, as soon as you say I'm going, even if you don't have a plan, your pilgrimage has started. It
Yeah.
has started, and it's not contained just as a labyrinth walk. Maybe you cross the threshold, maybe you get on the plane, but a lot happens beforehand, and a lot will happen after you leave or after you step off. And it's helpful for us to look at it as a complete experience, not just as an isolated one,
It's like
I
a
think.
before, during, and after. You got to have all of it included.
Exactly. Yeah.
One last thing about, you've mentioned Chartres and the Santiago, but Labyrinth, are these specifically, Christian practices, or does people across the world and cultures enjoy Labyrinth and the visit to Chartres and these different sacred places? Do you find it pretty, how do you find that around the people that you're with?
Well, Chartres is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, so it's acknowledged, in a very formal way as a place for everyone. And it was built, with Christian theology, medieval Christian theology, which almost none of us would recognize in its form today. even those of us who are Christians. As a Christian, I think it's awesome because I get to step into my own tradition, a part of my tradition when before the Protestant Reformation, when the church was, at least the Western church was one, and the imagery is familiar to me. But the stories themselves, for instance, in a window, the stories are much bigger than just the Christian stories. So people of all traditions and all religions and no particular religion find themselves, quote unquote, at home at Chartres because
Mm.
of the beauty, because of the things I spoke about before, the actual resonance, the colors. These are human uh, invitations to opening, and they are not related to one particular tradition. So everybody's welcome, and I've talked to people of all different traditions who have been there and found it very meaningful.
That's wonderful. It seemed
Yeah,
to me that there was everyone there when I was there those two times. And it's just good to
absolutely
reiterate, I think. Um,
important.
Finally, Jill, I'm toying with the idea of asking someone a certain question at the end of all of these interviews. And I'm wondering if you'll be the first. We've
I will be
touched
the first.
we've touched upon it a little bit. This question might change over time. We're going to workshop this, but I would love to know for you personally, is there a threshold moment that you could share?
Right now.
For you,
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
absolutely. I'm sitting here in a hotel room in Chiang Mai, Thailand, about to go to the borderlands where my husband and I work with refugees who have fled from Burma and the civil war there. It's been 5 years as of February, just a few days ago. So the threshold for me is always, will I leave, will I open my heart? Because the things that we hear, these are colleagues, people we've been working with for several years, and some of them many years. Even we were working with them in Burma before they fled here. Colleagues from the seminary where my husband is on the faculty there. And the question is always, will I open my heart? Will I be willing to be with them? Because we're going to hear and be asked about many, many very challenging, difficult things.
Mm.
So that is one side of the threshold, one threshold. The other threshold I have being from Minnesota in this moment when ICE is very present there is, will I love and not hate? And I every day, um, as difficult thoughts come up in my heart, I just turn my face as a reminder that I will always choose to look towards love inside of me first. So those are two important
Wow.
thresholds right now at this moment.
Thank you for sharing that with us. And I would speak for myself and probably anyone who hears this that we feel what you're saying. And I hope that you bring us with you in that love and in that
Thank you.
support as you're at these very, very important thresholds. And we are in them collectively and we're in them individually. And you're naming thresholds as right now. There's a threshold right now. And every choice that you make is a threshold moment. And I hadn't thought of it like that. So I appreciate that too. Yeah.
Well, I would just like to invite all of your listeners and viewers to come to Chart either virtually. There's some awesome ways to get there virtually or in person. The Labyrinth is open on Fridays, starting in Lent, whenever that starts each year, through the 1st of November every year, and only on Friday. So come on a Friday if you want to walk the Labyrinth, but there's no place like Chart. I'll just say it again.
I have to agree. I have to agree. And I'll finish with a little plug for what we're doing,
Mm,
which is in October of 2026, the 3rd through the 10th. Jill has agreed to come on board and engage us with stories and help us really bring the Chartres Cathedral alive to a group. It's called, our pilgrimage is called Hidden Things. And so we will explore these thresholds in our lives and the things that are hiding in our heart. They're in the center that are ready to emerge, that are ready to come forward. And I know that you know about a lot of hidden things that are actually in Chartres. So I'm excited about that scavenger hunt as well.
it'll be fun. And transformational. It's just, Chart is an amazing place to open. You're supported in opening there, and it's fun to. I love the Shard Cathedral. You can see it, you can feel it, and I love sharing what I know with others who are curious and interested. So
Well,
I'm thank you for inviting me to be a part of that,
I'm
Jessica.
very
My
excited
pleasure.
to keep walking this path together. Thank you so much for coming on and being my first interview of Room to Evolve. It's a very auspicious time for us, and
I
you've
feel
been a
honored.
wonderful guest.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.